All right, what's up, boys? K-Mock here. Get it? K-Mock? Mock draft? K-Mac? I think the first overall pick is very clear. It's going to be Cam Ward, heavy betting favorite to go to the Titans. I think they just love the guy. I heard he had an amazing pro day. He's got an extremely high ceiling. I don't think he's as pro ready as somebody like Shador Sanders is, but it's the most important position. I think he has a much higher ceiling, just a better athlete in general, has the ability to make all the throws. I think it's just a matter of consistency and development, but that one is super obvious. Now, pick number two is interesting, right? We talked briefly just about Shador Sanders. The Browns and the Giants both need a quarterback. The Giants can't score points. I mean, let's just be honest. They have no quarterback play at the moment. I've heard rumors of Kirk Cousins possibly going to the Browns. He was awful for the Falcons last year. Now, granted, I don't think he was fully healthy. I don't think it was either him not being honest, the Falcons not being as forthcoming about his injury, his Achilles. But even then, I just don't see that working that well. Plus, we got to think about the future. How likely are you to be picking again with the number two overall pick? If you're the Browns, maybe it's a little bit more likely than a team like the Giants, who I think have some talent. The Patriots, I might be biased as a Patriots fan. I don't think we're going to be picking inside the top five again next year, especially considering the fact that we have our franchise quarterback. So with the Browns, I think it's more likely they go with Abdul Carter and they take a shot later, whether it's trading back up into the first round if somebody like Dart or Sanders even falls, which I think that's a scenario we're going with in this particular mock draft. We are going to drop Sanders outside of the top three. I may have just spoiled it a little bit, but I think the Browns can maybe make a play for Jackson Dart, maybe even make a play for Shador Sanders a little bit later in the first round, or maybe take a shot at Milrow in the second or third. We're going to give them Abdul Carter. Again, offense is their problem. Offense really sells tickets. They're building a new indoor stadium as well. That's going to be a pitch going forward for future franchise quarterbacks. That is a huge issue for him, but I don't feel like you can pass up on a potentially generational pass rusher in Abdul Carter, Micah Parsons Jr., for Shador Sanders, who maybe doesn't have the highest ceiling, right? He's an accurate quarterback. He doesn't produce a lot of turnover-worthy plays. But again, how good can Shador Sanders actually be if he reaches his full potential? That's the big question mark surrounding him. So I think unless a team loves him, especially the Browns or the Giants, they're going to take one of the two best players in the draft, which is Abdul Carter and then Travis Hunter. And I don't think Travis Hunter makes a lot of sense for the Giants. I think if Sanders is going to go anywhere inside the top three, he's going to go to the Giants. And that's just because, again, I don't think in terms of actual fit, Travis Hunter makes a lot of sense for the Giants. I actually think a player like Mason Graham is a much better fit, but he's not going to be as big of a playmaker. He's not going to have as much of an impact on a game as somebody like Travis Hunter can, especially considering the fact that he obviously plays two positions, and he likely will at the NFL level. Now, will he play full-time on both sides? Probably not. I don't think that's entirely realistic. And then on a team like the Giants, how is that actually going to work? As a Patriots fan, I feel like it makes a lot of sense for us, right? Drake May needs a number one target. He may have gotten it in Stephon Diggs in the short term, but Diggs is coming off a pretty serious injury. He's getting up there in age. He's certainly considered a veteran now. He is a long-term number one pass-catching solution for the Patriots. Plus, he could probably moonlight at corner. He could play the slot, the nickel. He could potentially even play safety as well. So I think he's a great fit for the Pats, and I would love for him to fall to us. I would love for the Giants to take Shador here. I just think the Giants, if they don't take Shador Sanders, they're going to take the next best player in the draft. Again, I think Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter are easily the two best players in the draft. And then Cam Ward, obviously, who is already gone by this point. But again, I don't think it's a great fit. They don't have a quarterback. The Giants don't have a quarterback who can get the ball to Malik Neighbors, who I think is going to be a top 5 receiver at the end of the season, and Travis Hunter. They don't have a quarterback who can get those guys the balls that they deserve, right? And then on defense, again, they have a pretty good cornerback core. So how is Travis going to work in there? I have questions surrounding that. I think Shador makes more sense. But as it stands right now, it kind of looks like they maybe aren't in love with Shador and they'll just go with Travis Hunter. I'd also be really shocked if they traded back. I think they just stick and pick there, which means my team has been screwed by the Giants once again, right? Twice by Eli, and then now again in the 2025 NFL Draft. In this position, I think we just take Will Campbell. From what I've seen, the Patriots love this guy. You know, he tested well at the combine. The big question is his arm length. You know, 33 inches is kind of that threshold, right? And he's right on that. His arms seem to get bigger every time they do the measurements. It's obviously a big topic of debate if you're really into the whole draft thing. I think this guy is awesome. He played great in the toughest conference, right? He measures well again. He had a good combine. He's got the right attitude too. And I think that's the biggest change heading into the next season for the Patriots is they're looking for guys with the right attitude because our culture was a huge issue. That's why Mayo was gone last year. We just didn't have any fight. Nobody seemed to care. The comments that players were making were just ridiculous. The comments that coaches were making were ridiculous. The fan base was up in arms. Will Campbell is a guy who's going to be a solid player. Will he potentially just play full-time guard? Certainly. I think he is a pretty safe pick. The tough part about picking him at 4, though, is are we just going to pick, you know, a career guard at number 4? Is that just a waste of a pick? I don't think this draft class is ultimately that deep, that talented. You get a guaranteed starter here who's probably going to be pretty good, even if it is just at the guard position. I think they're going to go Will Campbell if that happens. I would like to see them maybe trade back too. Maybe you could trade back into the low teens, get McMillan, maybe, you know, get somebody like Warren even, maybe get Membu. I don't know. I wouldn't hate Will Campbell, but obviously I would love it if we got Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. Mason Graham just makes the most sense here. Every mock draft I've ever seen has Mason Graham going to the Jags. It makes the most sense. He's a super talented player. They need defensive line help in terms of the interior. They have 2 great edge guys in Trayvon Walker, who's developed super nicely, and then Joshua Allen Hines as well. That guy's a monster. So their defensive line, great on the edges, needs some help in the middle. Mason Graham will bring that to that squad. Easily makes the most sense. In my opinion, McMillan could possibly be a choice there as well. But I think they go with Mason Graham here. And then this is where it gets interesting. The Raiders, I think, are projected right now to take Genty, right? That would help a lot with that team. I heard Renfro is possibly even coming back to the Raiders, so they'd have Renfro, who's solid, Jacoby Myers, who is more than serviceable at receiver, definitely above average, Brock Bowers, who is probably already the best tight end in the league. You get Geno Smith coming over, who, to be honest, I'm not very high on. Plus, he's already up there in age. Do you take Genty here? Kind of, you know, take some of the pressure off Geno Smith, maybe the potential future starting quarterback of the Raiders, and lean on a generational running back prospect? Or do you take a guy who has fallen right in your lap? And I think if Sanders fell to the Raiders, I think they would take him. You need to plan for the future. It's not that far away. Again, Geno Smith he's got to be 34, 35 years old. I think it makes sense, especially with Tom Brady obviously having a lot of influence in terms of who they're hiring, you know, at the coaching position, what they're doing with the front office, with players that they're signing. I think Sanders makes a lot of sense here. For the Jets at number 7, you know, if Sanders fell to the Jets, would the Jets take him? I don't think so either. I think Membu is the obvious pick here. You could argue Tyler Warren as well. You know, they did pick up Stone Smart, though, who's certainly not a bad player at the tight end position. I think they just lock up the offensive line here. They lose Morgan Moses. The rest of the line is not that bad. You get Membu, a great day one starting tackle with a super high ceiling. He's incredibly young as well. I think Membu makes the most sense here. And then for the Panthers, I wouldn't hate to see them trade out of this position. They obviously need a lot of help. They're still rebuilding. Bryce Young looks like he might be coming into his own. He's been playing a lot better recently. You could certainly give him a little bit more help with McMillan, But I think the most logical pick here is Jalen Walker. They have the worst defense in the league. Jalen Walker is 20 years old. This guy is a little bit undersized, but he's an incredible athlete, super high ceiling. He's a player who can do a lot of different things, and I think that's super valuable in the league on the defensive side of the football at the moment. And then that leaves us with the Saints at number 9. Same thing. I would like to see the Saints, potentially trade back, get some more picks, stockpile those. They're rebuilding as well. They need a lot of help. With Kellen Moore coming over, though, I think there is a possibility these guys could take Jackson Dart with the 9th overall pick, which might be crazy. They could try to trade back a couple spots and get him a little bit later and then pick up some draft capital as well. I think Jackson Dart is in play here, but I'm going to have them take. I'm tempted. I'm tempted now. I kind of want to change my mind right now and just take Jackson Dart, but I'm going to give them Michael Williams. Again, another freak athlete right here. They need help on the defensive line. The Saints, anytime I think the Saints, I think of a devastating 4-man rush. Cameron Jordan is close to retirement. That's how they've always played defense. Michael Williams just fits their scheme defensively really well, in my opinion. And that leaves us with the Bears at pick number 10. Who honestly don't really need a lot. I think they killed it in free agency, picking up Dahlman at center. Tooney, who's one of the best guards of all time. He's getting up there in age as well. He's certainly probably past his prime at the moment. Not that far past. He probably is currently in it. But, they could potentially draft an offensive lineman of the future in this position. I just don't think with Will Campbell and Membu off the board, it makes a lot of sense. Just take Genty. DeAndre Swift is not that great. He's not that explosive. Pair Caleb Williams up with a fantastic running back to take more pressure off of him. You got some great receivers. I could also see Tyler Warren going there. That would not surprise me. I know they have Kmet. But a great safety blanket, a tremendous player in Tyler Warren could be a sneaky pick there as well. But I'm going to go Genty. I think it just makes the most sense. And then at pick number 11, the Niners need a lot. I feel bad for Niners fans, man. I feel like they kind of missed their window, having Brock Purdy on a cheap rookie contract, just a lot of injuries, especially last year. Unfortunately, they need a lot to get back to how good they were. They lose Shavarius Ward to the Colts. I think they go Will Johnson here. I think they're lucky he falls to pick number 11. Will Johnson is just a class above every other corner in this class, in my opinion. He's got great range, incredible athlete. He could play man, he could play zone. I get Barron is great, but Barron is more of a slot corner in my opinion. He could play safety possibly as well. Will Johnson is really head and shoulders above every other outside corner in my opinion. The Niners really need a player like that. And I think they get it at pick 11 with Will Johnson, which leaves the Cowboys at pick 12. This one's obvious to me. If McMillan falls to them, you take McMillan. Obviously, Genty's off the board. If Genty fell to them, they'd probably take him, but give some help to Dak Prescott, massive contract coming back from injury. I think they could easily compete for the NFC East title. That might be a hot take. We got to realize, though, they're only 2 years removed from winning it. They beat a very good Eagles team that year as well in terms of winning the division. I get they struggled last year. Obviously, Dak was injured for most of it. They have lost quite a bit of talent. But McMillan, CeeDee Lamb, and Dak Prescott, that is a pretty formidable passing attack right there. It's just going to open up huge doors for everybody else on that offense in general, I feel like. And Dak Prescott with McMillan, with CeeDee Lamb, MVP candidate. I think he should have won it 2 years ago. I think he could potentially win it this year if they make this pick. Hot takes all around here, but at pick 13, I think the Dolphins go with Barron here. They need help at corner. Again, they lose to Von Holland as well. Barron could potentially play safety. He's kind of a utility player in the secondary, in my opinion. Just makes a lot of sense. They could go offensive line as well. There's some decent offensive linemen still up here, like Josh Simmons, like Kelvin Banks, for example. But Barron's a great defensive player. The Dolphins need a little bit of help on that side of the football, especially in the secondary. So they're going to take Barron here. And that means Tyler Warren, who's one of the best prospects in the draft, falls to the Colts. Again, this is another match made in heaven here. Get Anthony Richardson a safety blanket at tight end. They got some good receivers. They have Jonathan Taylor, pretty good offensive line. Anthony Richardson had a bad year. I think with a consistent target like Warren, he's going to play a lot better next year. And then at pick 15, we have the Falcons. I'm going to have them taking Shamar Stewart here. Mike Green is certainly in play here. Their pass rush was awful, though. Easily their biggest weakness outside of Kirk Cousins for most of the year. They do need some other players. They need corners. They need wide receivers potentially as well, even though they have Drake London. We'll see how Kyle Pitts plays with Penix. I feel like we're running out of excuses for Kyle Pitts at the moment, though. But Shamar Stewart tested, absolutely out of this world at the combine. Didn't really produce a lot, but there's players like that in history who are tremendous NFL players at the moment. Danielle Hunter didn't really have any crazy sack numbers in his career. He tested incredibly well at the combine. Obviously, he just got paid big time by the Texans. One of the best premier edge rushers in the league. I don't think you can go wrong with Shamar Stewart here at 16. Now, they picked up Josh Sweat in free agency, but they missed out on Milton Williams. They need interior defensive help. Walter Nolan gives you that. This guy is an absolute monster. They obviously need help at corner as well. I think it's a little bit early for somebody like Revel, for example, maybe Trey Amos. It depends on, what order you have those guys in the next tier of cornerbacks, in my opinion. I think Walter Nolan just easily makes the most sense here. And then obviously the Bengals, they need defensive line help. Hubbard retired. They still haven't re-signed Hendrickson. So I'm going to give the Bengals here. They have a couple options on the defensive line. Well, actually, they really have one, in my opinion. You could argue between James Pierce and Mike Green. Mike Green just had an incredible career at Marshall. He's a monster. I think he's going to be great in the NFL as well. They take Mike Green, which leaves an interesting pick for the Seahawks at 18. They pick up Sam Darnold. They need offensive line help. I think they need offensive line help, particularly on the inside, on the interior. So left guard, right guard, center. Their guards are horrible, man. Their tackles are not bad. They need edge help as well. I think they could take a receiver potentially. Right now, the receiving core is JSN. They have Kupp, who's obviously up there in age, past his prime. And then Valdez-Scantling, who is, he's a deep threat. He's not going to get the ball a ton. He's not really a long-term solution at receiver either. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this one. I think they could take Kelvin Banks here. Kelvin Banks falling back to pick 18 is kind of a dream scenario for the Seahawks because, again, even though he's listed as a tackle, I think he could ideally be a guard in the NFL, especially if you need him to. So Kelvin Banks here. Zabel, same situation. Could be a fantastic guard, day one starter. You have a guy like Matthew Golden, like Ibuka, still up there at wide receiver, though. Two great receivers who could be long-term solutions at that position. You get Darnold again. You paid him a decent amount of money. Do you want to give him more help? Not necessarily on the offensive line, but with catching the football. I'm so torn on this one. I'm going to give them Kelvin Banks, though, just because their offensive line, it's not great. They play in a division with the Cardinals, who we have them getting Walter Nolan. They have Josh Sweat already. They have Zaven Collins. The Rams have arguably the best defensive line in the league now, with the Eagles losing a couple guys, and the Niners, who have always had a very good defensive line as well. They always seem to make it work. So I think they go Kelvin Banks there. Jihad Campbell just makes a ton of sense for the Bucs. Obviously, Levante David is coming back, but he's up there in age as well. You need to think about a long-term future replacement for him. Jihad Campbell is a do-it-all type of guy. He can rush the passer. He's great off ball, great tackler. It's really just a match made in heaven. There's a few of those in this draft, like Mason Graham to the Jags, for example. I think it just makes too much sense for Campbell to go to the Bucs, unless he potentially went earlier. I don't know what team could take him before then. Maybe the Saints. I think that would be kind of a reach, maybe. I think the Bucs just make the most sense. Now, the Broncos here, another team similar to the Bears who have very few holes, to be honest. There's not really a lot of teams like that. The Eagles don't really have a lot of holes. Maybe a couple now, losing a guard, losing some of their pass rushers. But the Broncos look great. They're primed to make a run at, a division title, I think, potentially this year. One of the best defenses on paper in the league, maybe the best. Obviously, Bo Nix had a tremendous rookie season as well. In my opinion, I think Bo Nix has already potentially reached his potential, which might be a crazy thing to say. But you got to realize he's already 25 years old, 24, 25 years old. So he's not exactly that young. He's not as young as somebody like Drake May, you know, is, even though he comes from the same draft class. I think he potentially sophomore slumps. I don't really think that makes a huge difference, though, with how talented this team is in general, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Take some pressure off of him. Get Amari Hampton, easily the second best running back in this class. Another fantastic prospect. If Genty went to the Raiders, I could see maybe Hampton going as high as pick number 10 to the Bears, again, who don't really have a lot of needs, but I think he makes a lot of sense here at pick 20 to the Broncos. I could see them taking Matthew Golden there as well, though. They do need receiver help, but running back, in my opinion, is just more pressing. Take Hampton here. Complete your team. You got a great team on paper. Again, primed on a rookie quarterback contract to make a run in the postseason. That's what you're trying to do if you're the Broncos. You're trying to fill in the holes that you need and win now. Steelers, I mean, I think the Steelers go Jackson Dart here. I know this is kind of a popular opinion. 3 quarterbacks are going to go in the first round. I'm almost positive about it. I don't see how the Steelers don't go with Jackson Dart here. Again, they could take some other players here with Hampton and Genty both off the board, though. They do need a running back. They need a tackle. They need a safety. I think it's maybe slightly too early for a safety here. I think there are 2 safeties that will go in the 20s, so maybe not. But you need a quarterback, right? You don't have a long-term solution there either. You know, obviously there's no breaking news yet about what Aaron Rodgers is going to do. Even if he does go to the Steelers, you still need a guy for the future. Jackson Dart has a very high ceiling. Will he pan out? Huge question mark surrounding him. It just makes sense. You need a guy for the future, the most important position. You take Jackson Dart here at pick 21 before anybody else has the opportunity to trade up and go get him. And at pick 22, we have another very interesting decision. The Chargers need help in a few different spots, particularly on the edge. They lose Bosa. James Pierce still on the board here. You could take a true number 1, a guy with true number 1 potential like Matthew Golden. You got Golden, and then you have McConkey. That's a great receiving core for a tremendous young quarterback still in Herbert. Or do you take the Michigan guy? Obviously, Harbaugh is the coach now. Does he lean with somebody that, you know, he personally coached, Colson Loveland, who I think you can make the argument for that he's better than Tyler Warren? Loveland is an amazing athlete. I could see him going in the teens as well. This one's tough because I think very highly of Golden and Loveland. I'm going to give them Loveland just because right now I believe their tight end is Conklin, who is not great. And, you know, Herbert does love his tight end. Stone Smart got a lot of targets last year. Will Dissly got a lot of targets last year. Give him a guy who can get the ball, who can run routes, get open, really do it all. A great safety blanket option here in Colson Loveland, who's got great playmaking ability as well. I think that makes a lot of sense, but I don't think you can go wrong either way. And I'm not really on the board here at pick 23 with the Packers taking a wide receiver. I know a lot of their fans want them to go in that direction. They obviously don't have a true number 1. They got some decent young guys. Do you take James Pierce here or do you take Matthew Golden? That's another really tough decision. I'll give them Matthew Golden in this case. Malachi Starks to the Vikings here makes a lot of sense for me as well. Obviously, Harrison Smith is coming back next year, but he's up there in age as well. You have to think of a replacement. A great ball-hawking safety like Malachi Starks. You can never really go wrong. He's one of the more talented players in this draft, but you know, people always say the safety is really not that valuable of a position in the draft. He falls to pick 24. I think Viking fans are ecstatic if that happens. You could go Amana Wari as well. Out of South Carolina. This guy is a physical freak, tested incredibly well at the combine. He's 6'3". I could see him going in the first round. Honestly, very likely. I'll probably have him going to potentially the Bills or the Commanders here. But obviously the Texans, they need help on the offensive line. We're going to give them, ooh, I don't know. This one's tough. We have Zabel here, who again is more likely to be a guard in my opinion. And then Josh Simmons, he played for Ohio State. This makes sense. Pair him with CJ Stroud, obviously an Ohio State alum as well. You could go either there. Tackles, just obviously a little bit more important of a position. They lose Tunsil to the Commanders. And then for the Rams, a couple options here as well. Not really, in my opinion. I think they got to go cornerback. Again, this really comes down to what order do you have these guys in? Revel here. Hairston's a monster. Trey Amos is great as well. I like Hairston the best, personally. Do I think he goes here? No. I think they take Revel in this spot, so we'll go with Revel. The Ravens, you go James Pierce, help with the pass rush, obviously a need for that team. Zabel as well at guard. We'll give them Zabel in this case. You got to protect Lamar Jackson, right? Potentially the best quarterback in the league when he's playing at his best. Protect him. He's still young. You get Zabel here. Can't go wrong with James Pierce Jr. either, in my opinion. And then for the Lions, they could go James Pierce Jr. This is really a team that doesn't have a lot of holes either. You got Kenneth Grant here. Derek Harmon could be a fantastic choice. This is another team that I'm kind of torn on. Again, just because they're so good. What do you even do here? Can you even go wrong? I'm going to give them Kenneth Grant. He just adds a great run-stopping ability to that defensive line. With the Commanders here at pick 29, James Pierce Jr. still up here. Luther Burden the third up here. Do you give your young quarterback who has all the potential in the world another target? You have Debo, McLaurin, and Burden. That is a dangerous receiving core right there. You could take a safety again in Amon Awori. You need safety help. They don't really have a lot there. They lose Chin. I don't know. You could take Ibuka as well. I'm going to give them Luther Burden here at pick 29. Great after the catch. Kind of more of a slot guy. Maybe kind of overlaps a little bit with Debo Samuel, but with Kingsbury as the OC, he'll find a great use for him and Debo together. That is a scary, scary offense. At pick 30, I'm going to give the Bills Amon Awori here. I know the Bills need defensive line help, particularly up the middle. Derek Harmon makes a ton of sense here. But they've lost Hyde, they've lost Poyer. Their safety play is not great. I'm going to give them Amon Awori. Now, for the Chiefs here, we hate to see this as football fans because honestly, I feel like we've all been rooting against the Chiefs just because they're so damn good. They could potentially take James Pierce Jr. here. They could take Derek Harmon. Two great players for the defensive line. Obviously, they need offensive line help as well. I think they saw the blueprint in the Super Bowl, though. Get a ton of pass rushers, rotate them, and just feast on opposing quarterbacks. I'm going to give them James Pierce Jr. I know they lose one of their defensive linemen to the Panthers, one of their interior defensive linemen, but I think James Pierce Jr. here falling to pick 31. He's just too good not to take. And then Harmon goes to the Eagles. Another fantastic pick for them as well. Losing Milton Williams, losing Josh Sweat, and just reloading at that position. Super deep class in terms of defensive line. And, unfortunately, the two best teams in the NFL get two great players at pick 31 and 32. Well, fortunate if you're a fan of those teams. If you're a fan of any other team, seeing James Pierce Jr. go there and Derek Harmon going there would be a little bit unfortunate for us. But I like this draft here. I think this is super realistic. Again, as a Patriots fan, I would love for Shedeur Sanders to go at number 3. That way Travis Hunter can fall to number 4. The whole draft would change at that point. But I like what I have here. I'm super excited for the draft. And, let me know what you guys think about my mock draft. We'll do a second round. We'll do a 2 or 3 round mock draft in just a couple days, I think. I kind of have a lot of fun doing this, to be honest.